Welcome back for our final panel discussion. Some of these questions have been sent in by the speakers as things they would wish to discuss, and some of the questions Benedicta and I have constructed. But we will be addressing a question to a particular speaker, but then we would like everyone to maybe join in the discussion. The first question I am going to pose to Florence, and it has to do with something you brought up, and I think something that every speaker has brought up, and that is the fact that no one wants to think about, talk about, or discuss death. And as our final speaker, Christoph, said, you know, we have this massive kind of ignorance about palliative care, and it, of course, is coupled to this resistance to talking about death. So my question to you I like this better. Okay. My question is how to educate people in general to talk about and accept death. That's an easy question, right?
First of all, I think that I'm never speaking about dying and death with people. I'm speaking about life.
Okay.
And for instance, if I have the children, I will ask the child, do you know how your dad fall in love with your mom? And then he said, no. Can you explain? And then we are elaborating on life. What has been the most important life events for this family, and speaking about life and speaking about love. And my question is, what are we doing in order that love is staying alive even you are not with your family anymore? So who is taking care for love and for surviving of love? So we are not speaking directly about going to die. We are speaking about life events, stories, creating a common narrative. And I think those kind of experiences will help those people to think about death and dying later on. And what is very sad is I'm very surprised that even over 70 years old people are still surprised when their 92-year-old mother is going to die. Mm-hmm. So may I ask, did you never thought about that?
It's probably different in different cultures, but it is surprising, isn't it? Yes. Yes.
And that you have to challenge people, so you have to directly ask them.
But it sounds like you're addressing the emptiness in this, what Carlos has called the transition period. It's filling that with meaning, which will be in the future, it sounds like, instead of the loss that's impending.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Anyone else like to address this question? Carlos?
To me, it's not working.
No.
It's working, yes. Okay. To me, there is a problem also in the education that we receive the future professionals. Mm-hmm. Because the issue of the death is addressed in legal medicine, but I don't know if in other pathologies or in other courses. No? In my university, we invite a clinical scenario to teach the students of the 6th year about the death of a person. So what they can to do in that situation. And the scenario was a simulated patient that is an actor, and the students has to attend that patient in the very last moments. Mm-hmm. So that issue in the room with a small group of students, it was as a bomb. Mm-hmm. So they didn't know what they have to do.
Okay.
So now we are doing this every year. Mm-hmm. But my thought it was, how is possible? Because we review if there is some experience like that in other places, and we don't find experience like that. And I think, how is possible that in the faculties of medicine, we don't teach about this. And even thinking in myself, how I can teach palliative care without to explain better this issue in the last 10 years. So medicine has a problem.
It's the omnipotence of the saving doctor, right? I mean, isn't it just the idea that we're not going to be defeated by anything, not even death, right? You just have to...
My thought is that the problem is in the medicine.
Yeah.
What is the goal of the medicine? The goal of the healthcare? No, I'm talking about not only medicine, but other health professionals. What is the goal of the healthcare? And inside the goals of healthcare, there is caring people, and this is the main one. It's not cure people. Cure is second name, when possible, but we have a role with the incurable patient too. So the problem is in the medicine, I think.
Interesting. Thank you. Any more thoughts? Yes, please.
No, I think I'm quite optimistic actually what's happening in society, because I think there are more articles in media, there are more TV programs, there are books, there are bestsellers about death and dying and grief, and media is picking up. We had from last week, maybe you saw it in Dagens Nyheter, there was a big thing about our communication courses and about the doctor in Södersjukhuset. 2 pages in Dagens Nyheter and the same in Sydsvenskan last week. So there is an interest from media to bring this up, and I'm sure people are reading it. So I think it's happening things in society.
Good. Okay. Thank you. Yes.
Maybe one minor illustration of, to what Carlos has said. In Germany, we have allowed about 5,000 hours of education for medical students. And in the 6th year, we see the students, and I asked, how much have you heard about palliative care so far? 0. And they get now 14 hours out of these 5,500 hours, which is 0.2% of the whole education. And 100% of them, maybe not 100%, 98%, some of them go into clinical, laboratory medicine, whatever, but 98% will have to cope with the dying patient.
Wow.
That is a problem. Yeah, we have a problem in education still.
Exactly.
And I think that even if you are optimistic about society, in the profession, doctors are really scared of doing too little, not doing too much. That's a great problem. And I think that is something that feeds the wishes to die, the wishes to legalize euthanasia.
Thank you. Thank you. Then I have a question for anyone who would like, but perhaps Carlos. How should families and Florence be incorporated into the decision-making process regarding palliative care and palliative sedation? What kind of guidelines can we provide to help them navigate their own ethical and emotional dilemmas?
How the family has to be involved in all, because that's the question that you ask. Depends also of the culture, because in some cultures the family is more present and in other cultures less. So that's true. I have not a unique answer of that, but the palliative care approach has as principle that we have to care the patient and the family. So if we use a palliative care approach, the family will be there. The problem is when the doctor, the nurse, don't use this palliative care approach. So doing medicine with the serious illness patient means to look at the family or to look at the caregiver too. So again, there is a problem with the education. So we have to educate people to attend not only the disease, but the person, and not only the person by the family. So this is a big problem. With palliative sedation, there is another mistake, that is, there is a lot of misunderstanding about palliative sedation in the society, because the word sedation means different things for different people. For some families, sedation means euthanasia. And when you talk about sedation, became very nervous because they are thinking that you are doing bad things. For other people, sedation is something that has to be mandatory and not the last resort that you have to use if the patient isn't suffering and you cannot relieve. So you have a good understanding about palliative sedation, and the family has different understanding. So first of all, when you talk about palliative sedation, you have to explain, without to use the word, what you are doing. For other people, palliative sedation means give death. So, and with different values, positive and negative values. So, there is a lot of work to do with the family when you have to provide sedation to the patient, because in some way it's ethical and it's mandatory to you to use that resource that the medicine has. So there is not one unique answer. No. Palliative care approach means attention to the relatives and attention to the medicine. And difficult issue is palliative sedation because family understand different things.
That's a good point. And Mikaela wants to add something.
I think that you can talk about palliative sedation at an early stage, and many patients are really, they feel safer when they know that there is this opportunity at the end. And you can't talk to the patient and then the patient and the family. I've seen so many times, yesterday for instance, a patient who really now it's time, I want to be sedated, and her husband who was in the room, can't you wait until tomorrow? And she did, we gave her extra morphine, and 2 hours later I got a text from her husband who said that she's now sitting up in the bed, she's watching TV, she's very happy. So when he was involved and they could take this together, everything was much better. So I think it's very important to talk about it, and it's not, I don't think people are frightened when you talk about palliative sedation. On the contrary, they are eased.
No, I was thinking that palliative sedation is in one way the ultimate resource in symptom control, for symptom relief. It's not, as I see it, instead of, we can't do euthanasia, but we can put you to sleep. And, and so it's not some type, it's very, I think we have to be clear about this as this is a mean of symptom relief and not instead of euthanasia. Yes. And I think we have to be clear about that.
Yes. And the majority of patients that know that they can have palliative sedation won't ask for it.
No.
Christoph.
I fully support everything that has been said, but putting the finger, start with the positive, now comes the meat. But palliative sedation or intentional sedation is also problematic. It's not all that easy as it sounds now. If you're saying it's not about euthanasia and ending life, but for example in the Netherlands, the numbers of patients that die under sedation increase exponentially. And why is that so? Because
easy way out.
It's the easy way out. If you do euthanasia, then you have to, write everything down. You have to follow the safeguards. You have to inform the local ethics committee. If you do sedation, you don't have to do that. So there is an issue with sedation. The second point, I fully agree that we should talk about all issues in regard to symptom management with the patient, including sedation in case of unbearable suffering. But sometimes then you have situations that you promise something and you can't keep it, because then you have a patient who says, you told me I want to be sedated now. And not always it happens like that you give a morphine extra and the patient is happy. And you come every day and you say, it's the same issue with assisted dying, the request for it. And the third point is, it's a complex medical procedure. And we have to tell our patients that it doesn't always work fully, that there are side effects. There's one side effect that they cannot communicate anymore, which is, something we would expect, but sometimes people, have side effects from the medication, or they get delirious through sedative medication. So it's not the pink pill which solves all the problems. Sometimes it also makes problems. Sometimes in teams, somebody says this patient should be sedated. The other says, we take his autonomy. He's not able to, care for himself anymore. This is no good. So it's a good possibility in very special situations.
And
but
keeping fluids.
Well, how do we cope with that? Yeah. So
Or not.
To be clear, if I talk about palliative sedation at an early stage, I tell them that this is the very, very end when you are practically dying and you suffer unbearably.
Yeah.
You can sleep.
You can sleep
Yeah.
when you die.
Yeah.
Not you die. You don't die because we bring you to sleep. You sleep while you are dying.
But it's I think I fully follow you. But in many services, it's not used in a good manner either.
No.
When you look into the data, we have units that say we sedate 50% of our patients. Something is going wrong there. So we have to also be careful with this procedure and people have to be educated well.
I would recommend strongly the new APC guidelines. That is very clear, very well discussed, word by word. A lot of people dedicate a lot. Things are clear there. We need to study because there is not easy palliative sedation. Sometimes things has a happy end, and other times you need to work a lot with the patient that is sedated, with the family, with the patient, and so on. We need to study, and a good way to study for every professional or every person involved in the field is to study the new APC guideline on palliative sedation.
I wonder, how common is it that the staff has ethical kinds of discussions with these patient cases, or do you just have a kind of a protocol that is done, or do you have really a kind of very deep kind of a reflection together? How often?
Always you can do things wrong and right, but in cardiology, for instance, and you can use any medicine in the wrong way and in the right way. So this happens in palliative care too. You can use the sedative in good way, or you can use the sedative to perform
question.
An euthanasia. So, what is the right way to perform this medical procedure that is palliative sedation? As any other procedure, you have to discuss in advance with the patient. In which way? In the way that could be possible. If the patient is agitated, you cannot discuss with the patient. You have to discuss with the family, or the patient has cognitive failure. So in the way that could be possible. If I say to this patient very clearly and with big words that you are going to be sedated and you will be not able to wake up, never. So you are giving to that patient in bad way the information. So to perform this medical procedure, we have to do the things well, and we have to learn, and any other procedure.
I think if you don't think about the actual procedure, but I mean, if you have a patient, and in the team there might be one doctor or a nurse that think this should be the patient needs sedation, and then some other members of the team or another doctor think, well, I don't think so. Yeah. I mean, how can you cope with the frustration? And when is it time? Is it always the patient who decides yes or no? And I mean, there is a balance. And in the team, you may discuss this, maybe not always from an ethical, philosophical, but there are things to discuss when you initiate sedation. Isn't that right?
Yes.
Because there might be different views.
Sure.
And someone could say, well, I think this is euthanasia. And then you have to explain that this is not euthanasia, but it's something else. And so, of course, I think there should be discussion.
And I think it often is. Yeah. at Stockholmskyrkan we have the rule that 2 consultants should sign this together to when you initiate palliative sedation.
Florence wanted to add something.
Just to, I think one very, very important thing is that the relationship and the trustfulness relationship between the doctor in charge and the patient family is long enough, and the patient and the family have an experience of being listened, of being understood, then it's easier to make some decision. What I see very often is that the palliative care decision is taken too late, and we don't have any time, and the palliative team has too less time left to work with the family and the patient, and then you are sometimes precipitated in catastrophic situation and decisions, which is very sad. So we need to more and more to help medical doctors, especially oncologists and hematologists, to transfer the people early enough into time. Even the curative treatment is still going on, but in parallel we can have a palliative care team taking care for the patient.
Yes, Christoph.
It has to be underpinned with what Carlos said, because due to the variable quality in decision making regarding sedation, procedures, discussions, we have to follow guidelines. And we have just developed out of this framework for Germany clear hands-on recommendations how to do this. And for example, the team there's no sedation without a team discussion.
Very good.
So this is one of those recommendations.
Okay, very good.
And sometimes you have a situation where you have an emergency sedation, then you do the team discussion afterwards. Why is that so? It's for, balancing this ethical decision in the team. But Carlos said a very important sentence. Sedation is only in case of untreatable suffering on an expert level. And we'd think as doctors and nurses about expert level, but there's also the psychologist or the spiritual carer who may have an idea what could help in that situation. And the multi-professional team can then decide in every dimension of suffering, we have done everything we could, and the patient is still suffering. And if that is so, it's a team decision. The doctor has to, prescribe it. Will be unchanged. But he can base that on a team discussion. I can only stimulate every country to take those guidelines and translate it into hands-on recommendations.
Thank you. Very informative. Thank you. Shall we take a follow-up question? We can let you in. I'm not supposed to walk with this thing. Here we go. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
So it's a follow-up question on the integration of palliative care in early enough. So the needs are infinite, the resources are finite. So how do you cope with those pressures? Because obviously you have lots of patients, so thousands, perhaps one approach is to have that palliative mentality in the oncologists early enough, but we cannot refer every single patient to palliative care.
Sure. To me, it's very clear. You are looking at me. I'm answering very quickly. To me, it's very clear that not all the cardiology is done by the cardiologist, and not all the gastroenterology is done by the gastroenterologist. When you are giving one blocker of H receptor to the patient, because in English it's difficult to me to explain that. When you are giving a pill to the patient, you are doing gastroenterology. The same is happening in palliative care. When you are looking at the patient with that vision, that means holistic care, team working, attention of the family, and person-centered care, you are doing palliative care. So you are right. So the specialist level of palliative care has to be reserved for the complex patient, but the most patient has to have the management of the primary health care team or the specialist that is treating these advanced diseases. And only the complex cases has to be in hands of the specialist. That's the vision.
Okay, I would like to move on to another question. I would like to ask Mikaela.
Yes.
You write in your latest book about a dignified death, and it's kind of interesting that that term, dignified death, is used both within a palliative context and in the context of those who would plädera för
Promoting
euthanasia or active assisted death. And can you maybe tell us a bit what you can mean, what is meant by a dignified death within the palliative context, and what is dignity in relation to death?
I actually wrote that I would like to not use the expression dignified death, but use the expression a good death.
Oh, yeah, that was
Well, I think a lot what dignity would mean is, I think, to me, it's very much to let the person be the same person that he was when he was alive, to that he is not treated as an object, that he is not the ulcer to be, but he has a name. It's not his disease that's important, and try as much as possible to treat the person and not the patient.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
And but I actually tried to get away from that.
Okay.
that word, use it in this context. I would
Okay.
like to talk about a good death, and that also, of course, is different because it's personal. It's how this, like the man, who had a real bad life in a dirty apartment, and he was drinking all his life, and the thing he wanted when he was going to actually have palliative sedation, what he asked for was a last cigarette. And we could give him that, and the nurse and I who was giving him the cigarette, we were so happy about this, because this was was good for him.
What he wanted.
Yeah, that was what he wanted, and that's how we would like to work.
I often think that the reason behind this, the argument that it's undignified to die, because that's what you really mean with this assisted, it has to do with the decay of the body, something like that, right? The guilt, the shame, all of this kind of thing. And my idea is that the work in palliative care is somehow a counter to this, where you do not see the body as disgusting, and you like, but you said it very well. You see beyond the decay of the body, and you see the person, and I suppose that's the core of it.
It's rather common that the relatives say that this is not dignified, because he can't go to the toilet for himself and somebody. But the patient seldom sees that. It's often more often the relatives. I think about my father, who was, when he was dying, he was paralyzed, and he couldn't take care of himself for like 2 months, and he was the same very fine person all the time. He didn't care about these young people, taking care of his excrements and things like that. It didn't matter. He was he and not his body.
That's interesting. Yes.
No, but I think it's easy to talk about the patients who have no problems with this, and of course we are respectful and we treat the patient with dignity, but the patient's experience of deterioration and not being dignified. Yeah. We need to listen to that too, because otherwise we're denying. It's like sitting in a psychotherapy session and saying that the patient doesn't have his rights to be anxious or depressed or something. I think it is. We need to be quite cautious how we use this wording, because it is the experience of the patient or the patient's fears of the future that is not dignified. And I think it is important to take that really serious, because otherwise we can't have a deeper debate or discussion or dialogue about these questions.
And I also think as a phenomenologist like Carlos, you have to ask, what does it mean for you?
Exactly.
What is dignity for you? And it could be completely different things.
I
But
think,
the borders are moved.
Yeah.
What you believe is will not be dignified at the beginning of the disease. It's not the same that when you
Interesting, yeah.
come to the end.
Did we have a follow-up question here? Yeah, please.
I had a question in this context because I think the development in the society is very important regarding to what the patients are used to have control over and are what they can decide. And there are some people in the discussion about euthanasia or the patient's right to decide I want to die who says this is not a question for health care, it's a question for our society or community or government. What are your thoughts about that?
Thank you. Yes.
I think one thing is very clear. Even if we talk about a good death, this is for both sides of the, of the discussion. The palliative care world talks about the good death, and the promoter of euthanasia talk about a good death. And I think you raised a very interesting question, which is very important also for healthcare in general. Why is healthcare the answer to the request for euthanasia or assisted dying, physician-assisted dying? There are countries where it's completely different, where it's, the role of the society. What does it make to the healthcare if we suddenly open it up for euthanasia? We have to look at quality, we have to educate people, we have to do studies, which is the best medication and the best drugs. I dare to think about Germany with all those protocols. We have to teach it our students. That changes the view on institutions that offer healthcare. Am I safe there? Other countries decided to leave it out of healthcare and have it as a societal role. For example, in Switzerland, it's not the task of a hospital. It's organizations outside healthcare. And that's something we also should think about. If our societies really want that, and that is my pessimistic perception of the development over the last 25 to 30 years, then we should really decide whether it's part of healthcare or not. So this is really a very, very centralistic question. Whose role is it?
Thank you. I would like to talk about freedom of conscience. That the palliative care did you take Canada for an example, that some of them has withdraw funding if they don't do euthanasia. Do you know if the staffing there have the option to opt out from euthanasia?
The individual, yes, by the time being, the right for you call it consensus objection. You say I am not taking part in that procedure, but as an institution, as the laws are right now, you then have to do it in an alternative way. Let teams come in, because there are already mobile teams that go into institutions and perform euthanasia or medical assistance in dying.
Thank you. I have a question. Are you really tired? You okay to go? Okay. I have a question here, and this is for Carl Johan. I've started to speak Swedish. You spoke about this in Sweden. It's decentralized, right? We have no central organization about this, and you also spoke about we need to spread knowledge about palliative care and the palliative perspective. What kind of a public health? What is a public health perspective within palliative care, and how do you see that palliative care and public health can work together? If it could be something we could maybe put on another level, you know what I'm saying?
I think that it follows up on your question in society. What is the role of society when it comes to death and dying? Because to die is not a disease, and it's not a diagnosis either. It is something that happens in our civil society. So we need to to be aware of that, and then I think to spread the knowledge in society that this is actually part of your society, that we die, and not just part of healthcare. So I think it goes in with your discussions, and how can, and then the big question I think is what is responsibility for palliative care to work with the palliative care sort of ambitions and goals, or is it someone else who should do that? But nobody else is doing it. And for example, in Lund, there is one of the most popular courses internationally is the Master of Public Health at Lund University. People from all over the world, they don't know what palliative care is. And it's a public health issue. And a lot of people from developing countries, and they don't see the palliative care needs of these countries. With young people dying from infectious diseases and all you talked about. So that's very interesting. And so in our unit, we have started to work with this and to engage society and see what it is in parts. And we have applied for a lot of money, we didn't get it, to see if we could work on this theme and expand it and explore the possibilities. And I think in Sweden we don't have so many voluntary, as I said, societies and workers, and so that's not our tradition. In football, yes. Parents taking their kids to all these sports things and so on, but not in care, really. So I don't know if you have an experience from a public health. It is a wave today, and EAPC is also supporting a lot of this with a palliative care approach. It's big in Canada, it's big in Australia, it's coming in a lot of countries. So I think this is probably something we could hope for in the future.
Yeah.
Maybe I can't add an answer, I would rather add a question. What will change within palliative care if societies rather decide for assisted dying?
What a question.
Yeah.
I see countries like Luxembourg, for example, they now have a 20-year experience, and now it strongly integrates also into palliative care units that they start to perform euthanasia. Why should I go outside and get it somewhere else? Why are you not doing this? And I think there was a long time of resistance. But this infiltrates also into palliative care. That changes the field as well. And I'm really excited to see what happens in Spain with a long palliative care tradition. You remember Johan Menten in Rome? Yeah, he's one of the pioneers for palliative care in Belgium, and he reported his numbers of euthanasia on his palliative care unit. So what change? What is your perspective? What will I would love to, be resistant and stay in the position we were, which was very comfortable for 25 years, but we will have to cope with societal realities, and I'm completely unsure what will happen there. Do you have an idea?
Yes.
Okay. Let's go. You go.
Thank you.
You go first.
No, but I think if I think 5, maybe not 5, but 10 years from now in Sweden, I think we will not have euthanasia, but I think we will have physician-assisted suicide, like the Oregon model.
Within the palliative
I don't know, a little bit like Oregon, that it's not the attendant physician who is doing it, prescribing the drugs, but there are procedures for it. I think I think that would be a possible future, not euthanasia, I don't think so. But I don't. Of course, I don't know.
Here we have a question.
Yes. I would like to switch over to the other side of the spectrum, because what I've been hearing now is where you're sort of in control and where you at least have a diagnosis and you know what to do for some time. With me, I have my daughter and my son-in-law, and they're both nurses working in hospitals. And what they see so many times are very, very sick people who come in, or they're usually also very old, and they do everything in absurdum to keep these people alive. And I'm wondering, what can we, or if you could comment on this from a palliative care point of view, how to deal with this, because this is sort of the other side where you have to make, I guess, really, you have to make decisions fast and so on. And sometimes, I'm just quoting now, but they've also told me how doctors sometimes don't listen to the nurses, and the nurses are working very close to these patients. So I would just like to bring that up.
If someone wants to answer?
This is what we wrote about in this article in Läkartidningen, exactly that problem.
And I've written about it also in many different situations.
Sorry.
No?
Keep on going. Just keep on asking questions. Ask your doctors, is that really necessary, what you're doing? But it's a complex connection between patients, families, and doctors, because talking about death is hard for either one of them. And the interesting phenomenon is the following, and that connects nicely to the discussion we had beforehand. We have we do everything to not talk about death, and to ad absurdum do therapies to keep it as far away as possible. And suddenly, death becomes the savior. This is, this is the dying. This is the paradoxon of this whole discussion we're having. But
I totally agree. During the pandemic, when it was at worst, then we were accused of killing people because we didn't save 95-year-old nearly dying patients. It was really absurd and paradoxical.
Well, I totally agree with you. I've seen it too many times, but I think there's two perspectives or two things that is due to this. The first is what you all started about. You are not trained at all. You're only trained in curing and prolonging life. Not about when we cannot do that anymore. What will we do then? And also time. The doctors spend too little time with the patient. Nurses and assistant nurses see them 24/7. The doctors see them 5, 10, 15 minutes maximum a day in the elderly care? Not even that.
Once a week, perhaps.
Yeah, not even that. Not even that. One doctor can have 1,000 patients on their list and walk around. Especially in Stockholm, you have too many patients, you don't know them. But still, you're trying to do everything to prolong their life. And I have a favorite question when it comes to palliative care. It's always, for whose sake? For whose sake are we doing it?
Yes.
Yes? No comments? We're going to continue. Here we go.
Now I want to come back to your question you addressed to Carl Johan, because I think this way, who is up to decide whether we want some kind of assisted suicide or whatever we call it? Because as you mentioned, I think in your previous studies, you see that most of the people who have an opinion on it, they are healthy, and they are not in this situation. As when you work as an oncologist, you know that you change your opinion during the way. And so who is up to decide whether to have the possibility or not? And the second question regarding to my former question is, what kind of medical decisions that we are the ones who deliver are voted by the community? Do we vote for if we have radiotherapy or not, or which medical treatment we have? But this is the question that we seriously address to ask the community about things that we are about to deliver. And that's a difficult question for me. Know what the answer is.
Thank you. Okay. Someone want to? What was the first question?
It was a comment, more or less.
Okay.
I would suppose. Oops.
Okay. Somebody want to get on it?
my comment to the point of my colleagues is that the problem is so big. The problem is not euthanasia. The problem is not palliative care. The problem is how much suffering that can be alleviated is still here, and this is the problem. And the solution is not only in the medicine. The society has a responsibility. So for this big problem, we have two main actors, the health professional and the society.
Yeah.
As society, we have to request to the professionals that something has to change. But no one is asking palliative care, or no one is asking a new way to educate the future professionals. So the society that is part of the problem has to collaborate with the health professional to try to solve this big elephant that is in the room. But the solution is not in palliative care. The solution is in the society and in the medicine. And palliative care can be part of the solution, but is not the answer of the question, in my view.
Yes, Christoph.
One further thought, also in this direction. Isn't it our own fault? We have, strengthened autonomy. And I would not speak against autonomy. However, it's also a societal thing currently in this time. And it goes so far that we as doctors transfer responsibility to the patient and to his next. How responsible are we today to say this is not sensible to do this? It's futile therapy. We rather ask, what is your perspective? What do you think? Patient cannot decide anymore. You have there's a patient will. You decide now. I don't want to speak word for paternalism, but there were some good things about it in taking responsibility. And then we are wondering, when we all give it to the patient, to the families, that they ask for things like assisted dying. So it's also in our responsibility that the discussion has evolved like this over the last 25 years.
This is so real, what you describe, we all know it, that works with patients, and all doctors try to do their best, and the doctor believes that the best he can do is to treat, because that is what we have been trained and what we have studied many years for. And it's really a matter of teaching and education. So to start with ourselves and then teach to other colleagues and young colleagues. So I'm working in the emergency. We see all these patients, they pass through the emergency department. And nobody feels it's my responsibility to put a stop or to flag for this is not right. We think in the emergency, why did the oncologist not have this discussion with the patients and the family? Why didn't the cardiologist, when the patients were admitted 1 month ago in the cardiologist, why didn't the palliative care doctor maybe, or not the palliative care doctor, but the geriatricians or the doctor in the elderly house, and everybody make the same thinking. So the cardiologist will think, why did the emergency physician not put a stop in the emergency instead of admitting the patients to the department? So it's a matter really of spreading the knowledge, and these Betania courses. So my suggestion is that really each hospital where you work, you should have a palliative ombud, somebody that starts doing the course. It could be an undersköterska, nurse or under nurse, whoever starts it, just to start it.
Good. Yes. Mikaela wants to comment.
I think that in palliative care, when I stop giving, or I'm part of the decision of not giving any more chemotherapy, for instance, I think that I treat the patient. I treat him with morphine if he needs. I treat him with support to the family. I think that is treatment, and that is something that we have to. I read a book written by an narkosläkare, anesthesiologist, who said that during the years I have become to more and more admire doctors that dare not doing anything. I understand what he says, but I think that we do things. Even when we say that we can't do anything more, we can. And that's the important thing. We treat patients.
Sure.
But I can give an example. So when we decide that now this decide that, okay, now we're not admitting this patient to the cardiologist, we try maybe to get it directly to a geriatric or a palliative ward, then we can start treating the symptoms. I've been in an emergency room with a dying patient where the anesthetic doctors stopped us from giving morphine to a dying patient, because if we give morphine now, it will start breathing. So, but because the decision of deciding that, okay, this patient shouldn't come maybe to the intensive care unit is stopping sometimes from giving the right treatments also. So I agree with you.
I agree.
Once we make that decisions, we are treating them in a better way. We don't take 3,000 lab tests and try to get a line 20 times in a broken arm. We just decide to treat and see the patient. So it's, I agree with you. Yes.
Okay, I didn't have any more questions, so I'm just going to wind up and ask you if there's something you would like to say that you have not said, or your comments about the day, and then we can wrap it up. What do you think, Christoph?
I have to start. Yeah, I think it was a very open and very good discussion. I think we need more of that. To really honestly de-romanticize palliative care and de-romanticize assisted dying. There has to be an open discussion, and we have to face and really think about what does that to our field. In the core, it's always the patient and his next, and especially his next, because they are the ones that keep on living, and what they perceive in that time has a major impact on their well-being, on their ability to work, on their morbidity up to mortality. So I think it's a real big societal task to keep on discussing these issues very openly.
Thank you. Carlos?
My point, it was about education. So medicine has a serious illness, and palliative care is part of the solution of that illness. So if we put palliative care inside the medical education, inside of the health education, things can change in the long-term perspective. So,
from the ground up, so to speak. Yes. Okay. Carl-Johan?
I think that, first of all, I agree. I think it was wonderful discussions and open discussions. I maybe regret that I said that I think in 5 or 10 years we have.
Decided to take it back.
But I think, thinking about the development of autonomy and all this in society, I think maybe whatever we think about it, it might be good to have an awareness, whatever that does with, I don't know if that changed the argumentation, and how, because we are also part of this movement in society, and now we haven't talked about abortion, but I mean, are there things that we can be sort of morally against but accept in society? Could I be morally against assisted suicide but accept it? I don't know, and I think what I need is this kind of openness, that we can contain and hold these difficult ethical questions, because we can't put ourselves at the side of society. We are in society, and to be to stay in society, we need to be able to hold it and to discuss it and problematize it. And I think this was a fantastic opportunity to do that together. So thank you very much.
Sure, thank you. Mikaela?
I agree. And education is really important, and not only for the medical professionals, but also for the society. And the arguments that people who want to legalize assisted suicide, they often have arguments that are false. And there is a great lack of knowledge in the society, and also among these who are doing this propaganda. So it's important that we who know really teach people, I think.
Yes.
And thank you for this day.
And Florence?
Yes, I'm very thankful for this day and for sharing with all you, and feeling that we are so much on the same level of sharing of ideas, and the people too. But I'm concerned why those people who are not sharing those kind of ideas. Where are they? How to reach them? How to get them into this kind of conferences? For instance, a doctor who still is continuing antibiotics and medicine for all those people who are going through. How we can reach them and how we can get them thinking in a different way, and how we can get them not be afraid, because one big fear I think for medical doctors is now to be attacked in justice, but because you did not the right things, the kind of Americanization of healthcare, and therefore some doctors are continuing because they are so afraid of. So, yes. So how we be missionaries of palliative care among our people? That's how we get people in which are not interested at all in those kind of discussions.
Very good. That's a very good last word, I think. And I would like to thank you all for coming, and thank you all for coming, and thank Benedicta, who has organized this entire thing, probably by herself. So she's amazing.
Thank you. I will say thank you to Jennifer, who was working the whole day today. Thank you very much, Jennifer, for keeping together everything. And yes, thank you to you for traveling far, for coming here to speak 30 minutes or something, or a little more. Very nice. And thank you for the audience, that you were patient and were sitting here all day. So have a nice evening, and see you again for our next conference.